Speaking of punching people in the face, let's start this one out on a real positive note. Okay, get everybody real happy about their life and their week because let's just throw this out there. So this past weekend, this past weekend on Sunday morning, dog woke up. The old one that we talked about last week, cover art for last week. She had like this swelling in her neck, and it didn't look good. And we're like, what the hell is that? And that whole day, she's just going downhill, dude. Like not moving. She can't eat. She wants to drink, but she can't because whatever swelling was going on in her neck. And I'm laughing about it now, but it was horrific. And that night, Sunday night, I was like, she's going because it was labored breathing, and I've seen multiple living
Right.
things die slowly. And I was like, she's not going to make it through the night. We were looking for vets to come out to the house, to maybe, have to put her to sleep. It's a holiday weekend, dude. No one was available, especially on a Sunday. So basically, my wife stayed with her all night. She slept in the kitchen. The dog did, and my wife slept on the cold tile floor. Because it was bad. And the next morning, we took her into the vet and basically had her put to sleep. But what I found was interesting, and I was messaging you guys the whole time. What I found interesting was the night before and the next morning, my wife, because we are attached to this dog, man. I mean, it was time for her to go. She knew it, but still, it's a tough thing. And my wife and I went through all 5 stages of grief uh, the night before and until we got to the vet. It was all of it. First, it was denial. No, she'll bounce back. Then we started getting angry, not at her, but at each other. And then we went to bargaining, which was, well, maybe if we give her more time, this other vet can come over to the house. And we went through the stages and we finally got to acceptance. It's like, okay, it's time to take her in. It's the humane thing to do. And I don't know if y'all have ever sat around. I think you have, Roger, sat in the room while they give the animal the sedative. And you're supposed to be
Yep.
there until that sedative fully takes effect. They are, for all intents and purposes, they're gone at that point. So we stayed. Sedative took about 10 minutes and she was just out. And then they come in with the thing that stops the heart. And it's like, we don't need to be here for this. You know, that
Mhm.
animal's pretty much gone. So we stayed there. Yeah. So Hazel's gone. Rest in peace. We got her, we got her cremated. And all my wife and I could do was laugh because we were really torn up while it was going on. But we get to to pay at the vet and everything. So what do you want to do? I guess we'll get her cremated. Do you want the ashes? Well, how much is that? So it was reasonable. It was reasonable. So we're like, okay, we'll take the ashes. Well, do you want this box? It comes in. Sure. Well, you can have it engraved for free. What do you want on it? And I'm like, uh, Hazel. I don't know, because they had like, dogs' names. They had examples like the dog's name, from this to that, or they had a little phrase, "We'll always love you." My wife and I are like, we're kind of on the spot right here. We don't know what to put. We don't know when she was born, so I guess we'll just have her name Hazel on the spot. So yeah, it was. I know that's a downer. Trying to deal with it because 13 years is a long time to live with a dog, and it
Oh,
just
yeah.
obviously something's missing, right? I mean, it's just missing. She's not here anymore. And I'll say one more point, and I'll throw it back to you because I know you have a few things to say about this. I think I messaged with you guys. I think it's healthy for dogs and kids, or dogs, for families, kids, adults to have to go through something like this. Because what it is, and I know this is a really dark way of looking at it, first, it introduces kids to death, it introduces them to mercy, as well as that's an animal, we're humans, we're different, you know? But as an adult, it's 1/1000th of what you might experience when it comes time, like maybe for your parents, you go on a difficult decision, to go into hospice care. It's the same type of decision. It's magnified by 1,000 times, but at least it gives you a taste of some of those stages of grief you'll go through when you're making that kind of decision. I'm not equating the two. I'm just saying it gives you a taste of that. It kind of scars you up just a little bit. So maybe that decision, okay, I've been here before. I know what to expect.
No, I think you're spot on. I mean, one, sorry about the pet. I mean, that's, I've had to put my dog down and it's, dude, there are people out there I would rather see put down before, not all people, but there are some people I'm like, you know what? If I had to choose between you and my dog, it'd be close. I might have to flip a coin in that. And I've got some of those that, I would just pick my dog, but you're spot on, dude. It's, we're at this point where we try to inoculate our kids. I'm not sure if that's the right term, but we don't expose them to anything bad anymore, right? And we talked about it a little bit before, but there is a fine line there. It's like you want your kids to have everything you didn't have growing up, but you want them to appreciate everything that they have. And so there's a fine line there. And so when it comes to like death, and my kids, we talked about it where my kids have never really seen death. The one dog that we had put down several years ago, I took the dog, and that was and that was that's when it's time to do men things, right? That's when men do men things. We were living in an apartment temporarily and the dog had to go, and it sucks, dude. It's like, hey, your appointment's at 2 o'clock, so you leave at 1:30. Well, I don't want to leave too early because I don't want to show up early. So it's like, I'm like, all right, kids, give the dog hugs, we got to go. And they're like, holy shit, this is like getting ready to happen, right? And then like, all right, they hug and everybody's crying. And I put my sunglasses on, take the dog to the vet, and it's the you lay there while they're getting the sedative or whatever. And of course, when I got done, when they got done, and they're like, okay, we're finished here. I'm like a babbling idiot. I'm just trying to get out. Like, I actually don't remember paying. I think I may have paid in advance because I don't remember paying. I walked out, I had my sunglasses on. They're like, hey, sir, would you like to just leave me the fuck alone? And I just walked out, or leave me the fuck alone. I just walked out and I went to my truck and, I sobbed for like 15, 20 minutes. And then, you get over it. But it's those little things like that that you have to go through. It's no different than being bullied when you're in school. I mean, nobody wants your kid to get his face bashed in, right? But I mean, here's the deal: like, your kid needs to get picked on. Your kid needs to go pick on other kids. Get scuffed up a little bit. Do a little scuffing up, and that's how you grow up, and that's how you learn to cope. And when you look at a lot at, and I tell you, I don't know the stats off of it, so this is all anecdotal. When I look at people I know, kids and young adults, and even people our age, man, that suffer from like anxiety, right? Or panic attacks. I just don't remember it being that way when I was a kid. Like, I don't think I knew what anxiety and a panic attack was up until like our 30s, man. I mean, you're talking to the end of the Afghan war for us when I was like, okay, I've heard of it, here and there. And don't get me wrong, I've got, you got some folks that have seen some serious stuff and they have PTSD and this and that. But dude, I was just never exposed to that because you know what? Most of us growing up, you went through the trials and tribulations of life, right? You got to have the girlfriend. You got to have the breakup. You got to have the one who cheats on you. You got to experience that the full gamut in order to prepare yourself, because especially like the human body. I mean, it is the greatest learning, and I know it's kind of, redundant, but it's the greatest learning creature that's out there. I mean, everything you take in, right? Everything you're exposed to. And we just don't do that to kids anymore, And I don't know. I mean, when you're growing up, do you remember any of your folks or anybody you were around suffering from like anxiety or panic attacks?
No, I don't. And I was when you said that, I was sitting there trying to think, did I ever have a time when I was a kid where I freaked out a little bit, just like shortness of breath, super nervous. I'm sure it happened, but there wasn't a name for it back then, and I wouldn't know what to, it. I can't recall it ever happening. I'm sure it did. Maybe I don't know, but I wouldn't know what to tell my parents happened. You know what I'm saying? I
Right.
wouldn't know. So there wasn't a name for it. One thing you said struck a memory. You'll remember something from back like in the fourth grade when someone would say something. I haven't thought about this in years, but you said it's good to be bullied and get bullied. Okay, I was bullied a little bit in elementary school. Went to a school with a lot of Native Americans who I didn't realize hated white people. I didn't know why. I didn't get it. And
Did you try to give them a
they
blanket or something day one or what?
sometimes those kids would beat up on a white kid. Sometimes, no, it didn't happen a lot, but every once in a while they'd corner, three or four of them would corner a white kid and kind of scuff them up a little bit. That happened to me. It wasn't bad, but it happened. It happened when I moved to Texas. One guy still hold a grudge. In fact, I'm writing his name down right now on a topic we're going to get to in a little while.
Give him a shout out.
Yeah. And some listeners will know who this guy is, Damon in particular. But luckily, I know I'm going on that side. Luckily, I had Damon as a friend at an early age. So the bullying stopped very soon because Damon is freaking badass, man. I mean, nobody messed with that dude or his friends. But I remember what struck the chord was there was one time there was a kid and he wasn't small, he was my size, and we were playing soccer at recess or something. This is like fourth grade, and he like stole the ball from me or something that pissed me off. So I'm kind of following him after the ball goes away. I'm kind of following him, talking smack, and I'm pushing him a little bit in the back. I'm pushing him, you know. And this kid turns around. He didn't punch me or nothing. He turns around. It happened so fast. I don't even know. He was like Brazilian jiu-jitsu before it was a thing, like in the early 80s. He spun me around, got me in a chokehold, took me to the ground, and I was choking. Like he was choking me. He goes, "You done? You done messing with me? You done? Huh? Huh?" And I'm like, and he just let me go and walked off.
Yes, sir.
I was like, holy shit, what just happened? So I wouldn't call that bullying. That was just me, I don't like that. And I learned a lesson from that, dude. If you're going to start pushing, laying your hands on somebody, you better be ready to scrap because that guy was ready to go. And this kid his name was Tom, but he wasn't a bad kid or anything. He and I were actually in Cub Scouts together. But it's like I learned a lesson from that. I guess you could call it bullying what I was doing in that moment, but I didn't bully that kid on the regular. But I learned that lesson, and you're
Sure.
you're absolutely right, dude. But again, as far as I just think they've given a name to this stuff,
Well,
the
and when I'm talking about
anxiety.
like the panic attacks and anxiety, I'm not talking about like mentally. Like we all have the hey, you're going to go up and speak in front of 3,000 people, and I'm talking about like nowadays people have a physiological response to it, right? Not just a mental anxiety, but like physically, they have a reaction to it. And it's and when you look at when you bullied that kid, you call it what you wanted. I'd call it bullying, but you learned, right? I mean, you did
Mhm.
learn that. Hey, look, the guy
Didn't do
might
it
be
again.
smaller. Yeah, exactly. It's like he might actually whip my ass. And I think when we went to, you remember when we all went to SVAA back in our old lives or whatever, and it was very interesting there because it's, and I'm not like Damon. I'm not Billy Badass. I don't look for fights. I'd rather not get into one. Thank God, as a younger kid, I was always able to run fast. But one thing my dad always taught me, and something I passed down to my kids, was like, hey, if a dude says he's going to punch you in the face, take him at face value and throw the first punch. Right now, that changed because when I was young, like 4 or 5, I remember my mom, Korean lady, it's like, hey, you respect everybody, you turn the other cheek, and this and that, and then as you got older, you start to see that culture change. And then my dad's like, hey, dude, that guy gets in your face and says he's going to kick your ass. Take him at face value that he's going to try to kick your ass and at least throw the first punch. And I think
Mhm.
what was kind of amazing to me going to SVAA and what is that? It's the sudden violence and apprehension
Awareness
avoidance
and
course,
avoidance. Yeah.
awareness and avoidance. But so basically, you get put through a lot of scenarios, with a lot of bigger, better dudes that no matter how bad you think you are, you're going to find out that there's always somebody else out there that's a little bit better. What's amazing to me is how many folks that we were with that won't throw a punch. I mean, even our age and folks that like in our units, dude, I would have to say 50% of the class that I was with would not throw a punch.
They didn't wanna hurt anybody, Roger. What the hell?
Yeah, but it's like he's going to hurt you.
I know,
He's
I
going to
know.
hurt me. And he
Um,
might still hurt me, but I at least want to get the first shot because you know what? I'm going to hit you in the face and try to run. I mean, not anymore, but back then, it's like, hey, man, I was fast. I'm going to pop you in the nose. Hopefully I hit those tear ducts and I'm running, dude. I'm going to live to fight another day if I can. Right.
the funny story is with Josh, who's not here with us, by the way, totally stood us up, ghosting us. But, when he punched the guy and the scenario didn't call for that, he
Oh,
just
yeah.
went ahead
It
and
was the
popped him
train
anyway.
station.
Yeah. So, you know, yeah, nowadays when it comes to fight any type of fighting, I don't think about it hardly at all anymore, but you should think about it. You should think about it because nowadays, dude, I'm not gonna get in a fight because I'm not gonna risk what I might do to the other person because
Right.
if I'm fighting, it's not gonna be clean. It's gonna be to the point where you're right. I am throwing the first punch, and they don't even have to say they're going to kick my ass. Somebody gets in my face, and the hands start, and whatever, they exhibit all the signs. I'm not just going to punch them. I'm going to incapacitate them so much to where I can get away. Okay. And I got to make sure I'm going to get away and they're not going to get up. And there's some violent things you can do to a person. My nephew asked me, hey, you need to teach me to learn to fight. I'm like, well, first of all, I'm not a great fighter. I'm not. But the first thing you should do is go to the UFC rule book, right? Look at that. Everything that's illegal, master those things because they're not legal for a reason, because they're not fair and they're dirty. And you got to fight dirty. I'm getting beside the point. I liked SVAA. My favorite part of it is the avoidance part, the situational awareness and avoidance. Learn how to not get in the situation in the first place. It
Right.
goes against a lot of the stuff they teach you there goes against what the woke has been talking about, not just recently, but for years. Stereotyping is bad. No, stereotyping is a survival mechanism. When that goes into prejudicial type treatment, that's when, you can argue, okay, shouldn't be prejudiced against people, whatever. But stereotyping, like a female, you got take a female, a slight female, young. She's walking down the street. On this side of the street, side of the street she's on, there's a group of men walking toward her who look slightly drunk, and they're being very loud. On the other side of the street, there's a group of women wearing business casual or whatever, walking and talking peacefully and calmly. The female walking toward the two groups has a choice. She can either cross the street or she can keep walking toward the men. Common sense is you cross the street and you go the safer choice. That's stereotyping, the stereotyping behavior. Okay, there is nothing wrong with that. And I think a lot more people would do a lot better, especially females, going through some kind of sudden violence awareness and avoidance course. But yeah, I mean, I'm a big believer in that stuff. I had
Well, it's like those same
another
people
point
that
that I
talk
forgot.
about those same people that talk about stereotype. Oh, you shouldn't stereotype. You know what? Let's see you go sell some Girl Scout cookies in West Baltimore. Sorry, I don't see too many homies doing that, right? Because again, you have indicators, and it's those things that it's like, hey, look, man, maybe nothing does happen, but why take the risk? I mean, because one thing, especially as a guy, if you're walking down, you're in some scenario like that. I mean, chances of me kicking the asses of the ladies on the street are a lot higher than 3 or 4 dudes on the average, So it's like, hey, at the same time, I'm looking at my own risk because, hey, it's too late to assess risk when you're getting jumped, right? It's
Yeah.
too late to assess risk when they're beating your ass. And like you said, and what I tell my kid, especially my boy, my boy, love him to death. He's 21, and you remember what it's like being 21, dude. You're like Superman. And especially with him, as many bones as he's broken and screws he's got in his body and this and that. He's like, hey, man, I'm going to live forever. I'm just like, I get it. But, you do your best to just not get involved. Hey, they call you a punk bitch. Yeah, you know what? You're right, dude. I probably am. Just let me, Luke and Josh call me that every day. And if that, acceptance is, now I'm not talking about I'm walking my wife and they get up in my face and they punk me out and try to take my money and take my, whatever. I'm just talking about, you getting a verbal altercation and this and that. It's like, hey, dude, I'm going to do what I got to do to de-escalate it. And if you want to call me a punk bitch, yeah, that's great, dude. And I walk away and nothing happens. I'm fine with that. Now, when you are threatened, right, you or somebody that you're with is threatened, then it's a different ball game. And I think with you, with what you were saying, I think a lot of the folks in our community that we live with and work with, that is the fear, is because it's going nuclear first. Like, dude, there is no, back in the day, you remember this, like back in the day, it was escalation of force. Stop.
Mhm.
He keeps coming. Then I'm going to take my weapon. Stop. Okay. He keeps coming. Then I'm going to raise my weapon and I'm going to chamber. Stop. It's like, okay, they go through like 30 minutes of that stuff. No, you know what? You just shoot the dude in the face. Or like in our case here, I'm going to pick up a brick and I'm going to try to, smash his skull in. I mean, that's
Yeah.
just what you're going to do. You do that off the bat.
Well, and that's a thing they don't teach you. You remember sports, with a weapon,
Yeah.
go through the sports procedures. When they teach you that in basic training, it seems very slow, right? And it is slow the way they teach you. But once you become, I got a point to this. I'll get to it. It addresses yours. But once you get used to your weapon and you've actually been in combat, that sports is like second nature and it happens fast.
Oh, yeah.
Now you go to the escalation part. That's why it was so, I'll say the R word, it was so retarded, because it's like, this is something that's going to happen slow when they're within 21 feet. Absolutely not. It's got to be quick, man. It's got to be super quick.
Yeah.
And it does get quick. But the way they teach, green soldiers, oh my God. or anybody, cops, anybody. It's just like this escalation happens so fast. So fast. And it all happens at the same time, too. You're giving them every opportunity so you can have a justified shot, right? So back to the, I don't want everybody to think that, well, I'm gonna take you down. I'm not coming off as a badass, and neither is Roger, I don't think, because probably half the folks out there could beat my ass. I'm median toughness. How about that? I'm median intelligence and median toughness. Half the people in the world could kick my ass, the other
There you
half
go.
could. So, but what I do have is aggressiveness, and where that came from, that aggressiveness, it may sound pretty brutal. Roger and I are talking about bashing somebody in the face. The SVAA and those courses we took, they show you a lot of videos where you see what one human can do to another one who isn't prepared for that violence of action. And I know after watching all these videos, and they're horrible, it's stuff you can't even find on TikTok or whatever, or Instagram. That's always flashing through my mind. If I get in a fight, this person could do what I've seen before, and it is so inured into my head. That's why I say, bro, if you're gonna scrap with me, you better be ready, because I'm assuming you're gonna do to me what I've seen in those videos, and there's a certain amount of fear that comes up in there, and self-preservation. Sure. And those courses were so good because they drill that into your head. So it's like, I'm not trying to come off as Billy Badass, because, Damon's sitting there listening, just chuckling as I say this, I know, but it's like, I'm going to try to gouge your eyeballs out. And Andre the Giant's eyeballs, back when he was alive, they rupture at the same pressure as a 18-year-old girl who weighs 100 pounds. It's just like, you got to know those weak spots, punch them right in the tip of the nose. The magic spot to hit somebody is right here. It's just, I don't know. I don't want to come off as a badass. It's just like, and that's another thing. You never know who you're messing with. That's another thing, especially nowadays with so many people who take Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu and take their health serious. I mean, there's a lot more talented people out there, or not talented, knowledgeable people out there in combat, in hand-to-hand combat than there were back in our day. At least back in our day, it was, watch out, I'm a green belt in karate.
Yeah.
Nowadays, it's like, I'm a purple belt in jiu-jitsu. It's like, ooh, okay, this guy could legit kill me if he wanted to. He could choke me to death.
So we have a challenge for our listeners out there. We'll have to post, most of you already know where Luke lives as far as cities. So the first one that catches Luke, by surprise and chokes him out and actually takes a pic and puts it on our Slack channel, we'll send you some swag or something. We'll send you a Canteen cup.
Okay.
And some
I know one
stickers.
guy who listens who's going to try it. So, Rodney, I'll be watching you. Yeah, it's oh gosh.
Actually, since he's not here, we should be like, we should have made Josh the target. We'll just be walking down the street. Next thing you know, somebody's going to jump on his back like a spider monkey, start choking him out, taking selfies with him.
Yeah, man. Yeah. Speaking of violence, I know Josh has a lot to say on this, but I want to bring it up because there's a lot of talk about war lately, and we were talking about escalation of force, and there's a lot of talk lately about proportionality in war and what should be done and what can be done. And I put some thought into it, and we'll probably touch on this and maybe talk about it again with Josh to get his viewpoint on it. But I guess my biggest thing with when anybody's talking about war or what's going on in Yemen with the Houthis, what's going on in Israel, what's going on in Ukraine, what went on in Afghanistan, we were there, Iraq, Vietnam, maybe, Korea. We haven't had a war like World War II since then. We haven't. The United States hasn't. I'd have to do some research into all the wars that have been fought since the late 40s. But I think that we have in the West, we have a skewed view of what war is and what it should be. This is why Josh has a big problem with, and I'm blanking on the name, the executive order that allows the president to do limited military action without, you know, we
The
don't have
use
to.
of force
Yeah,
authorization, use
yeah,
of military force.
AAUMF or something like,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah, AUMF.
Authorization. Yeah.
So we haven't been at war like Afghanistan, Iraq, Vietnam, Korea. None of those were war. None of those were authorized by Congress to go to war. And I have a theory on that. I think that's a big mistake. Uh, in general, I think that's a big mistake. I'll save some of my comments. I'll just kick it over to you for your initial thoughts on like war and where we are right now, because I think we could kick this back and forth a little bit.
I mean, I think they forget the whole definition of it. It's war, right? I mean, you have two nations, two entities, two organizations that you are basically in conflict, and you're trying to eliminate somebody. And I do agree with you off the bat when you have uh, the projection of military force and the use of military force, not just to protect your own, but where you actually carry out strikes, you're carrying out offensive actions, that type of stuff. And we're not talking about defending yourself. We're talking about going on the offensive. That's a Congress thing, dude. They skirt the lawyers and the Constitution and this and that, but there's a reason for that. When you look at war in general, and I want to caveat it with some of our listeners because a lot of people aren't going to agree with. They won't agree with it in the open. But the problem with warfare with first world countries nowadays is they try to compartmentalize it, right? War is fought between Army A and Army B. Okay, yeah. In your pretty little world where nobody gets hurt and it's all military targets and this and that, and it's just the aggressors and the defenders, yeah, that's great. That is not how war is fought. That is not how it was fought historically. And well, I should rephrase that. We try to fight it that way. That's not how you win at war. Okay, because war is a machine, man. And when you look at World War II, when you look at World War One, I mean, go back all the way back to like the Victory Gardens and this and that. It is everything, right? It is resources, it is manpower, it's the military industrial base. That's 100% effort. And we try to compartmentalize war because it makes it easier. Okay, it's easier to show on news when we're just fighting army to army. Well, you know what? Somebody feeds that army. Somebody houses that army. There's money that's needed to raise that army and to sustain that army. Uh, eh, you know, Food, quarters, everything, right? Ammunition. And a lot of times that involves the industrial base, not just military powers, not just specifically military units. And the way you win war is you annihilate everybody. Now, I get it. Okay. We're not saying you walk into a preschool and you start mowing down a bunch of kids. But, they talked about collateral damage. I used to hate the term collateral damage because it didn't become a big term until I think about halfway through Iraq. It's always been there, but I don't recollect it being used a whole lot until we started hitting some targets that, okay, some civilians next door died and this, that, or whatever. But it's when you look at the term collateral damage, they tried to make it nice saying, well, hey, man, they're basically justifying not compartmentalizing war. And that's why they came up with that term. And the bottom line is, man, everybody who supports that armed force, everybody who supports that entity, that organization, whatever, that's a part of the conflict. And you will never truly win. And I do believe, and it goes a lot deeper. But I believe one of the issues that we've had is that we've tried to compartmentalize it. We've tried to separate it out. And it's like the military. Okay. They say, why can't you just bomb them to death? Okay. Bomb them into submission. Because again, you're trying to compartmentalize it. It's not just one service. Okay. You need the aerial support. You need folks on the ground. You need an army. Okay. You need the Marine Corps. You need people that are going to control the people, control the resources, control the populace, control the terrain. Okay. Things like that. So it takes everything. And I think nowadays, because we're into this big inclusive, love everybody, peace, love, and happiness. There's only a couple bad guys. We don't involve anybody outside of, the military organizations. That's not how you're going to win. And, it just makes you wonder, how long do we continue to go before, hey, man, sometimes civilian targets are absolutely worth it. And sometimes you have to hit them to win, right?
Yeah. I don't know how to organize all my thoughts on this. Yeah. Okay. So first of all, I love Robert Heinlein's philosophy on violence and war. And if you haven't read Starship Troopers, it's not really anything like the movie. It's a really good book. So I'm mark that off the list to get that out of the way. But what Roger's kind of talking about is of total war philosophy, holistic societal total war philosophy. And before I get into that, I'll say that, you know, again, we've got to realize how dirty and nasty war really is and should be. And in in order for the public to go to war, they have to realize the costs that that's going to incur, not just their only cost, but a human cost in general. I mean, we can't just be annihilating each other as human beings just for the hell of it, especially when you're so removed from, I take the Vietnam War, for example. The American public was so removed from what's really going on in Vietnam, they didn't really understand. And when the rubber meets the road, I've always thought that Vietnam wasn't necessarily a mistake because it was a piece of the Cold War. That's kind of true a little bit, but at the end of the day, if the Vietnamese were never going to bend over for the Chinese, which is what everyone was afraid of. But Robert McNamara said it himself. It's like he met with the North Vietnamese equivalent of the Secretary of Defense during the Vietnam War, long after they met and they had a long conversation. And the Secretary of Defense was like, for Vietnam, was just like, what you don't understand, Mr. McNamara, is we would never have bent over for the Chinese. We would go to war with the Chinese the same way you went to war with us. We would have fought them till every last person. And McNamara said it himself. He did not understand that about the Vietnamese people. So was all that death, not only of our soldiers, but of the Vietnamese people, was all that really worth it? And in retrospect, I'll say, no, it wasn't worth it. I think most people would agree with me on that, but whatever. So how about this? So we're talking about total war, and what Roger's saying is right. There are certain civilian targets that need to be taken out in order for the war to end. That means that innocent civilians are going to die who are working in that munitions factory. They don't have a uniform on, but they're working for a munitions factory. Those munitions go directly to the front line, to the soldiers who are trying to kill ours. Everything, medical supplies, all that stuff, especially if there's any rationing involved, where the priority is the troops on the front, you're a target now. Now, look, it's like Roger said, we're not talking about going into preschools and shooting up all the little kids, or shooting women so that they don't procreate, so that this war doesn't go on for in 18 years that woman might produce a fighting age male. We're not talking about that, because, and I'll tell you why we're not. When you're talking about war, you're talking about efficient use of resources. Efficient use of resources. Like, and then I know there's a horrible comparison, but it's something to be considered. It's like there were morons, not moron, every Nazi's a moron, but back in the Nazi regime, there were people within the government, the higher government, that were ordering these military troops, just shoot all the Jews. Just shoot them. Why can't you shoot them? And the military leaders had to explain, this is stock that needs to go to the war. Every bullet, you're talking millions of bullets here. We can't afford that. That's not efficient use of resources. So if we're at war with China, it's like, why would you bomb, a university, unless a non-research university? Why would you bomb that? That's not an efficient use of resources. You bomb the research university that's coming up with the mind control weapon or whatever that's going to win the war, right? It's why we bombed Dresden. It's why we firebombed Dresden, because Dresden was a munitions production. What I'm trying to say is a munitions production center point. I'm trying to think of the word.
Hub.
I can't think of the word.
100
Hub.
point.
Yeah.
Indifferent.
Because
Yeah.
I wanted to use hub for the next. It was a transportation hub as well. A lot of railways went through there, and it just had a big industrial base. So it's like, we got to wipe this city off the map. And a lot of civilians are going to get killed in the process. So it's like, it's that total war mentality that you win it as fast as possible. There's going to be a lot of, as Roger said, collateral damage, but that's how you win the war. That's why you have to take it so seriously. Because right now, so what? Joe Sixpack doesn't care if we bomb the shit out of the Houthis. He doesn't care. But at the end of the day, it's like, man, there's going to be dude, not everybody who lives over there is a bad person. In fact, most people in this world, they're just trying to put food on the table, love their kids, raise some grandkids and stuff like that. And in situations like this, people like that are going to get killed. Look at Iraq. Look at Iraq. Look at Afghanistan. And it's like we are so removed from understanding that there are real people on the ground who aren't doing anything bad. They're just trying to live, that are going to get killed in the process. But we're so removed, it's just don't care. Now, I'll tell you one thing that might alleviate this is if we went back to the old ways of doing things and there was no AUMF anymore, where the president could just unilaterally declare, basically a conflict in Iraq that's going to take this long, and a conflict in Afghanistan that's going to take 20 years. How about this? How about we go back to the old way of doing things where Congress has to approve it? And then anytime we decide to do a massive a military action where there's boots on the ground, there is a 1% to 5% war tax that comes directly out of your paycheck every single month. 1% to 5% war tax. 1% doesn't sound like much, but over 20 years, do the math. That's a lot of income you just lost out on as an American. So is it worth it? It's hitting you in the pocketbook. No one sacrificed shit during the global war on terror. No, Joe Sixpack didn't sacrifice nothing. What did they sacrifice? Nothing. I'm not saying they're bad people because of that, but if there was a little bit of tax, if it was hitting everybody in the pocketbook for real, maybe it wouldn't have been in Afghanistan for 20 years. You know what I'm saying? I'm just
No,
going round and round on
they
this.
would, because
You think?
it's because, dude, you hit on one of my frustrations with the government, especially as I get older. And we talk about this every couple episodes, but it's like, look at the money our government spends, and it is our tax dollars, and you have very little say on it, and so much of it is wasted. 1% to 5%, it's just an additional tax. People have what they have in their paycheck after the government takes everything, and that's just what they're happy to have, for the next 2 weeks until the next paycheck comes around. But going back to your holistic, approach to war, I mean, we have an act out there, the Defense Production Act of 1950, right? And we had that in response to the Korean War, the startup of the Korean War, and it's basically where the U.S. government can prioritize resources, the efficient use and production and dissemination of resources with the civilian population, civilian companies. Oh, did you write it down? Yeah, there you go. So
Yeah, you're hitting
they
on
can
a
go,
point I'd written down. Good job.
yeah, they can basically go to commercial companies, right, and say, hey, we need bullets, we need forks for the soldiers, we need shoes for the Joes, whatever the case is, right? They can go to a factory and they can say, this is what you're going to prioritize, and we're going to compensate you for it, and you're going to support the war effort. And what happens in that case is those entities, in my opinion, become targets. And you're starting to see it now with Israel. And I don't know if you notice this or not, but when you look at Israel and the Israeli Gaza, Hamas, that whole conflict, right? For the first couple days, man, I mean, Israel was fighting a holistic war. They're bombing everything. Hey, dude, they're going to level it. It's just going to happen. Like, hey, you know what's coming. You need to get out while you can. And it wasn't until the international community started, well, women and children and this and that. And the Israelis weren't about that, dude. I mean, they finally succumbed a little bit. They had a several-day ceasefire, and then they got to the point where I think they even were saying, hey, we're going to clear out the northern neighborhood. So if you're innocent, quote unquote, and you live in this part of the neighborhood, it's time for you to move out, because Hamas would never just follow suit, right, and move out with the innocent people, and they're going to of course stay and fight. That's because these people have no idea how warfare is fought. They have no idea what's actually involved in conflict. It kind of goes back to your statement. I was saying this, I relayed this to my neighbor when you were talking about, and I know we're jumping around, but you were talking about a civil war. People are like, oh, we got to bring it on, man. It's like, no, I don't think you understand what a civil war means. A civil war means I'm going to go to my neighbor, shoot him in the face, and take his resources. Or they're going to come try to do it to me, right? Like, they don't understand it. It's nice on a piece of paper and this and that, but they think, oh, we can just, again, compartmentalize it. We can just separate it. Well, you know what? When you look at the Defense Production Act, which I think the last time we used it was during COVID, right? We needed the masks, we needed the gloves, which, by the way, dude, and I know we're jumping around. It is great. I love with Fauci testifying on the Hill. So Dr. Fauci, one, he's in his first couple, and I know we're all over the place. In the first couple of minutes, he said, I don't recall like over 100 times. Right. Dude doesn't remember anything. He can write a book, doesn't remember anything. So they're like, Hey, where did the 6 foot social distancing come from? Yeah. So what kind of happened was, damn man, it just kind of just yeah, just kind of popped out there, just made it up. And what pisses me off about this, and I know our listeners know this, something as arbitrary, right? At the time, 6 feet social distancing. What was the second and third orders of effect off of 6 feet? Hey, that closed businesses, that closed schools, right? I mean, look at what that did. I mean, just the teacher thing with schools that went on for years. I know I digress, going back to the the holistic thing, but it's all tied together. We sit here, we try to isolate so many things, and we silo so many things, and it's like, hey man, at some point you have to live in reality, and we silo it because we don't like the ugly things. We don't like the ugly part of war. I used to hate watching like the Vietnam War movies when I was a kid. I'd get all teary eyed, because they just show especially me, being Asian, they show the Asian lady being raped or shot in the face or whatever. I'm like, oh man, that's my people, and whatever. They try to show that emotional side and tug on your heartstrings. And that's why we got to where we started siloing things. So we could take the ugly and we could remove it. But that's not how wars are fought. Okay. And
Yeah.
that's not how the Afghans fought it. That's not how Hamas fought it. That's not how the Israelis should be fighting it.
And I'll tell you, I mean, we go back to stereotyping, right? It's very interesting, um, the level of propaganda it took. It was much harder to convince the American people, who back then and now predominantly white. The fighting force was very predominantly white. It was very hard to convince the American people to fight the Germans. They had to make them out to be monsters, scary, real scary. And it was before anybody knew about the Holocaust. If they knew about the Holocaust, then it would be easier, but it was very
Sure.
difficult. That propaganda with the Japanese, not so difficult because they're different than us. Their faces are different. The color of their skin is different. It was very, very difficult. It wasn't very difficult. Like my granddad is hilarious. Like he hated the Japs until the day he died, but yet he owned Volkswagens. And it's like, you fought in the European theater and you own a Volkswagen. I'd never buy a Jap car though. And it's like, what? It doesn't make, but you have to consider that. You have to inure the people to that stuff. So it's like Afghans, Iraqis, stuff like that, a little bit easier for your average, I mean, because they're less like
A lot
us.
easier. I mean, a lot easier. Put it this way. You got to remember that the president of the United States took Japanese Americans and imprisoned them in internment camps in the country.
Not Germans, though.
Okay.
German
Right.
Americans went over and fought the Germans.
Yeah. Yeah. You know what we
You
did with the
know,
Germans? A lot of the
you didn't do that
Germans,
with
like
Germans.
we have an old train station here where they trained, and well, I don't really feel bad for them. I do in some sense, where it was like, hey, what's this old rickety? And I think I took you there when you came out to visit. Like, what's this old rickety ass, piece of concrete or whatever? It's sitting by the rail yard. And they took POWs from World War II and they shipped them out here to Queen Creek, Arizona. Like, guess what? You're going to start tilling the land and you're going to start working the
Yep.
farms. Now that's pretty cool this time of year because today's high was 74. Come out here in July or August. He's like, no, I'll go back to war. But you're absolutely right. Not only was it easier because you looked different, you spoke different, your alphabet was different, right? But they did it in the country to American citizens. I
Yeah,
mean,
man.
dude,
I mean,
that's 80 years removed.
so I gotta follow up on your the where they took the Germans there in Queen Creek. So my granddad, after he left the European theater, war was basically over. Came back home and he still had time left. So they shipped him to Fort Leonard Wood, Missouri, to become a POW guard in Fort Leonard Wood, Missouri. There were a bunch of Germans there. He was a POW guard. So those Germans, they just try to keep him busy all day. I don't know if they were tilling the fields or anything like that, but they just try to keep him busy all day. And one German made this. It's a wood carving,
That's badass.
1945. The flag raising over Iwo Jima, and gave it to my granddad. And it's made by German. He wrote, "Made by German and prisoner of war, 1945, raising a flag." I mean, that's pretty cool, right?
That
It's
is
like a German. That's why I balk sometimes when I think about all Germans were bad during World War II. You know, they they jumped on the train. That's a bad choice of words. They jumped on the thing that was going. They believed what they were doing was right. Not all of them were Auschwitz guards. They were just what they figured is they're fighting for their homeland. We suffered through some long years, and it's because we've been screwed, and we've been screwed for years. And whatever, there's just normal people. And this person, whoever made this, is probably long dead, definitely long dead. It's like they saw that and they're like, you know what, that's pretty cool. I'm gonna carve that out of wood and give it to this American soldier. You know, it's got an American flag on it. And that was just a normal dude. I guarantee you that was just a normal dude. Because if I got taken captive by, you know, Al Qaeda or whoever, or Taliban, they decide to keep me alive, I ain't gonna be carving no wood. Think about the Taliban retaking, the airfield in Kabul. I don't know. I thought I'd show that to everybody. It's pretty cool. Pretty cool little. I wouldn't call that a war trophy. It's very very interesting. Let's go back to COVID for a second. I want to talk about the firebombing of Tokyo, but maybe we'll save that to later when we talk about nuclear weapons and power and stuff. The COVID thing, man. So, have you seen? Now, this is neither here nor there, and we'll probably get this one pulled from YouTube. But have you seen that the cancer rates are spiking right now? Have you seen that?
Yeah, I think we actually did. And I saw some stats today and yesterday, but we did an episode on this back. Remember with the RFK thing that got pulled last year or whatever. We did a whole episode on it, dude. It is mind boggling when you look at the numbers across the board.
Now, let me ask you this though. So I thought about that. I actually thought about that when I was working out tonight. It's like, okay, I'll have to look at the numbers again because there are just more cancer rates right now, or is it just the percentages are higher? If the percentages are higher, that's bad. But if there are just simply more cancer rates, that's like 10 years from now, there's going to be the dementia rate 10 years from now is going to skyrocket. That's just going to happen. You know why? Because all the boomers are getting old and they're going to start getting dementia and Alzheimer's. Okay. So those are, and that's a huge section of the population. But I'd like to know what the cancer is at percentage wise. And with the cancer, everybody's going to go to this. Well, is it the vax? I don't know. What did we say when everything started locking down? We talked about education. We talked about people drinking more, unhealthy lifestyle, so on and so forth. It's just, I see if it's percentage wise, adjusted for the numbers of the growth of population. If it is percentage, I think I see a correlation. That's all I'm saying. And I'm not saying it's the vax. I'm not saying that. Although it could be, I'm not saying it is. Because I don't think there's any compelling evidence that an mRNA would cause cancer that I've seen anyway. But unhealthy lifestyle, depression, eating the wrong things, hell, just the stress of not being around people. I mean, I don't know. That reminds me of something I was going to say earlier about something else. I'll write it down. What do you
No,
think?
it's. I think you hit it on the head. One, there is no, going back to you can't compartmentalize, can't silo this stuff. It's a lot of things. Okay. And I'm like you, dude, I've had and you've had them as well. We've had like 50 or 60 different vaccines. The COVID vaccine ain't the one going to be the one that kills me. Okay. If anything, it'll be the cocktail of the other 50 or 60 vaccines that we've got in our body. But what's interesting is, and I just pulled this up off Google or whatever, it's percentage. So they were talking about, and I'll just read this straight from the site. A report released last year by the American Cancer Society showed that the proportion of colorectal cancer cases among adults younger than 55 increased from 11% in 1995 to 20% in 2019. That is almost double. Okay, now I think that's from a whole lot of things, and I think when you look at the COVID thing and just remove the vaccine because that just is what it is, and people beat that to death. And believe me, if it ever came out that the COVID vaccine was actually schwacking the younger generation, you'll never hear about it. The government will keep that stuff to a hush. But when you look at the unhealthy lifestyle that we had for the 3 years, and some places still practice it, right? When you look at the unhealthy lifestyle, just look at the schools. When you look at the schools and what they've done to set kids back as far as their development and learning, especially when you start talking about 5-year olds, 6-year olds, 7-year olds. Dude, you'll never make that stuff up. You'll never make it up. And the unhealthy lifestyle, when it came from not just drinking like the rest of us that binge drink or whatever, like every day for 2.5 years, it was just, hey, it's COVID. It's like when you go to a bar now, I want a shot. Was it a COVID shot or was it a regular shot? Because a regular shot's like 1.5 ounces. COVID pours became like 3.5, 4 ounces at a time, right? But so I think when you look at the overall unhealthy lifestyle, and then you just look at your body's natural defense and just the exposure. Again, talk about inoculating everybody, right? We're talking about emotionally and anxiety. Well, it works for pathogens as well, and bacteria and viruses. And we caught this a couple years ago. When they had the spike in RSV, it's like, dude, you knew this was coming because when you're supposed to, your kids are supposed to be out there eating boogers, getting dirt underneath their fingernails, putting their hands in their mouths, and you're slapping them. Hey, get your hands out of your mouth. They get a little sick at school. They come home, they bring it to the family gets sick, and you build up your defenses. That's what happens. That stopped for 2 or 3 years. And even now, dude, I just got back from a flight, and I'll kick it over to you. I just got back from flight, and it is criminal. I think I texted you guys. I saw a family of 4, husband, wife, I presume they're married, 2 kids, had to be like 5 and maybe 7 years old. And you know how cute they were? They all had matching masks that they were wearing on the airplane. And I'm just like, look, mom, dad, you're 30 some odd years old, obviously complete morons. But if you want to wear a mask, rock and roll, you do that. But man, what you are doing to those kids, they'll never recover from it. I'm telling you right now, they will never recover from it.
Not fully. And like you're saying, yeah, there's a correlation, and maybe the correlation is so weak as, well, locking everybody down and going through all those measures is sure as shit didn't help anything with respect to, people being unhealthy, having stressors on them and things like that. One thing I was going to say from earlier, you were talking about, because at the opening, we were talking about, there's much more incidents of anxiety. There's much more incidents of just people being nervous, and kids especially, the younger generations. And what I was going to say is, traumatic events in your life. I read an article a while back, and I did some research into it about, Roger, I don't want to put you on the spot, but there are traumatic events in your life, right? Traumatic event is a parent dying is traumatic events, a spouse dying, a divorce, a child dying. These are very traumatic events. But what they show in research is one of the most stressful, traumatic, and maybe the stressful events. So let's keep it as stressful. So replace all the times I said traumatic before with stressful. One of the most stressful things you could do in life is move households, like especially over long distance. I've read that's very stressful. What I've also read is that stressful events in your life can actually alter your DNA. It can actually alter your DNA. It'll make your body adjust to the environment of stress, right? So I believe that when we're going back to the kids and all this stuff, when you're sheltered from having any kind of stressful incident in your life of being bullied, or bullying someone else and getting your ass kicked, or whatever it is, living in the real world, you're not making yourself. You are not growing. You're not growing. You're not altering your body. Like Roger was saying, we are an adaptive machine. The human beings are the best animals in the world at adapting. Look at us. We can live in any environment. We live in Antarctica. We live next to volcanoes. Dude, we go into space. We go under the ocean. We're adaptable. We're adaptable creatures. But I believe a lot of that's just in our DNA. The more stressors you're exposed to, you're able to deal with those stressors. I believe that your body, it's just like working out, right? Your muscle is, put under stress, it grows. Because the muscle's like, we ain't going to do this again. We're going to be stronger next time so we can move that weight or run that marathon or whatever it is. But I think that the absence of stressors with kids is one of the things that's causing, maybe some of these issues. But that goes back to the COVID thing, right? Those stressors during COVID, I don't know if that's the same as the adaptability type stressor, because now all of a sudden everybody's back in the real world. It's like you're not going back to where that was. And what's amazing, where we were in 2021, at least in 2020, But I think that a lot of people want to go back to that world. I
Oh,
think a
hell
lot
yeah.
of people would be
Yep.
100% happy to go back to what it was back then. And that's where I get that huge disconnect. I don't know about you, but I just get this huge disconnect with my fellow human being. I mean, maybe we could talk about, one of our listeners who lives in the Maryland area. I think you know who I'm talking about. We haven't talked about sports, so he's probably still listening at this point. But I really believe, and I won't say broke him. It didn't break him, but it was like this veil was lifted. And it was lifted on me too. I'm not talking down about it. I can maybe let you finish the story. What he saw during COVID about his fellow American and how that affected him and the way he views his own country. Because I'm the same way. His own country and his own neighbors.
Talking about when they were, he basically had to sneak people in his garage, like in the back of his vehicle, so that his neighbors wouldn't report on him, right? Because he lives in a blue state. And but hey, you can't have more than like 10 people over at your house at the same time because of the whole 6 foot rule, right? And literally because of the neighborhood that he lives in, he was having to, and you talk about some underground railroad stuff here. I mean, dude, this is like 2021, 2021, where you have people in your vehicle and you got to back into your garage and shut the door so you can shimmy everybody out of the trunk so that your neighbors don't report on you. Right. I mean, dude, it's incredible. And I think you were spot on. What There's a lot of people that want to go back to the way it was, but it's a facade. It's not real. Because when you look at the COVID years, what happened? Majority of people started working from home. People are like, hey, this is kind of cool. I get to wear pajamas. Now, I work from home. I love it. I'm not saying that, people shouldn't work from home. I love it. I wouldn't trade it for anything in the world. But people that typically had to go to an office, that were not hired to do remote work, that were not hired to work from home, are like, hey, I get to work from home. I get to wake up in my jammies every morning, just kind of stroll to the island, hop on my laptop, do some work, making the same amount of money, right? Because we just threw everything out the window. So I get to do my same job. I'm working from the house. I'm much more comfortable. I'm making the same amount of money. You know what? There's a pause on my student loans that I don't have to make. Even a pause on eviction, so I don't even have to make my house payment. There was zero accountability because nobody was working 8 hours a day. And it's like, well, yeah, you know what? I'd like to make what I'm making now and not have to work during the day. Who wouldn't? Right? But that's not real. And you're starting to see that, and Luke just set this in the chat. You're starting to see the second, third, fourth orders of effect of this, and now we're dealing with a commercial real estate problem because of it. Absolutely. And I know I've got neighbors here who their businesses that they work for, companies they work for, were like in these monster buildings, right? And we all know you've seen the Booz Allens, Lockheed Martins, Northrop Grumman's, these massive 10, 15, 40-story buildings. And a lot of that stuff's cleared out. And you know what they did? They waited for their leases to end and they said, hey, everybody just start working from home and we're going to rent out a small WeWork place in case you ever have to come in and go meet a client, which nobody even does that anymore. But there are people that want to go back to that lifestyle. Now, again, I don't blame them for wanting to work from home. Well, then go get a job that allows you to do that. It's like, Elon Musk, when they were kicking people back into the factories with Tesla. You know what? It's kind of hard to put a car back together or build a car, manufacture a car when you're working remotely. Okay. Hey, some jobs you can do it and it makes sense. It's efficient. It's much more affordable typically. But some jobs, hey, man, you actually need to be out there. And then we got to this point where people just expected, right? It was the expectation. It's not that I can do this job from home and I'm just as effective because not everybody can work from home. But it's like, well, no, I can only work from home no matter what the job is. I could be at a steel stamping plant. I need to work from remote, work remotely. It's like, well, how are you going to actually do that? You have like a metal press at your house? I mean, I've even done interviews with folks that like literally you call up, have the interview. Hey, what's going on? Yada, yada, yada. They're like, okay, so what's your expected salary? Well, I expect to make at least 150 and I'm only coming in 2 days a week. Like I've literally had that said to me. I'm like, hey, you know what? We're probably not going to be a good fit for you. Good luck with that. Let me know how that works out for you. Dude, it's incredible.
Look, man, I know that they're way smarter people to me up at these, Fortune 5 companies who have weighed everything out. And I'll come back to that I'll come back to that in a minute. But for now, I'll say this, that even the job I'm doing from home, I know enough to know that I would be much more effective as a manager. I'd be much more effective, running this program if we were all in the same place, going into the
Absolutely.
office every day from 8 to 5. I know that it's
Absolutely.
a fact, and maybe that's because I'm a Gen Xer. Maybe I need to evolve with the times, but when people are together, number one, there's accountability. Okay, there's accountability. Your boss can walk into your office at any time. Okay, so okay, well, I gotta have some level of accountability here. I need to be, working or doing something. But number two, there's that collaboration. There's that face-to-face collaboration that you get. If a meeting's got to run an hour and a half, it's got to run an hour and a half, and you're just going to be in that meeting. I guarantee you this too. Like, and I'm not bitching about my job. I love my job, but there are far too many meetings, because it's too easy to have a meeting remotely. It's so easy. But if we were all in the same office, I could come down and talk to you for 5 minutes. 5 minutes. Just got to pop by and talk. But instead, we got to schedule this meeting, all this stuff. All I'm saying is, I know I would be much better at my job, and so would the people that I work with if we were all working in the same place, showing up at the same time, at the same place 5 days a week, right?
You hit it on the head. You
Now,
know who would be much better? Are the younger ones that need to learn from you, right? Because when they're
yes,
sitting behind their terminals, they're not learning jack versus being in space, learning, the legacy info, the continuity. Hey, it's no different than Matt Canada. Thank God we fired him as an offensive coordinator sitting up in the booth versus being down on the sideline. They pulled him from the booth, put him on the sidelines because you need to be in people's faces, right?
100%. And, what I was going to say is, I should say it this way. Hopefully, the more I learn about the private sector and the corporate world, the more I'm seeing people are not really thinking about cost benefit analysis. They're not really thinking about return on investment, at least not on the upper management level. Maybe on the executive level, they are. Maybe those people are. I hope they are. What I was going to say, though, is that hopefully there are much smarter people than me who have who have extrapolated. Look, we can be much more efficient. We can be more efficient if we all bring everybody together in some kind of corporate headquarters, and we're all, we have all these satellite locations and stuff. But having those satellite locations, having people come in, that's very expensive too. So maybe let's sacrifice a little of efficiency to save, bean counter stuff. Let's sacrifice the efficiency to save this $150 million we're going to pay on leases over the next 5 years. And maybe they're willing to sacrifice that efficiency to save that money. But again, I'll go back to this. I think these smart people are looking at the next quarter. They're not looking at the next 10 years. I'll say that right now, dude.
Absolutely.
I'm amazed. I'm amazed at what I see. I'm half an idiot, dude. I'm half an idiot, and I see these things. So, again, I mean, I think we're doing good work, but I think we could do better work if we were all together. And that's just all there is to it. And COVID changed that forever, though, and that's why we're having that commercial real estate bubble right now. Which y'all mark our words. And okay, so I'm going to say this. I'm going to say another thing, Roger, and I'll kick it to you. Okay. This commercial real estate bubble, this is going to be a thing. And it will probably be a thing in 2025 or 26. This bubble is going to pop, and it's not going to be good. There's so much commercial real estate out there. Something's got to be done about all this because these loans are coming due. People aren't able to pay them. There's been a lot of speculation over the last 10 years on commercial real estate before COVID. And now that speculation is done. It's dead. A lot of people are going to lose a lot of money, and jobs are going to be lost. This is going to be maybe not like maybe not the housing crisis, but it'll be about half of that. That's my prediction. Now, before y'all start saying, "Oh, Lukester, you don't know what you're talking about." Nah. Let me tell you, before Culper's Canteen Cup in 2018, I made a post on Facebook. And the post said something like this: do you want to create a super flu pandemic? Because that's how you create a super flu pandemic. This is from 2018, folks. I don't get on Facebook much anymore, but occasionally I'll get on and look at the memories because, hey, what happened 7 years ago? Oh, weren't those the good old days? I posted this article. Century after pandemic, science takes its best shot at the flu. Scientists hunting universal vaccine to protect against regular winter flu and the super flu too, and the next super flu too. This whole article, if you go to my Facebook page, if you know my last name, if you go to my Facebook page, you can see this article that I posted in 2018. And you know what it's talking about? It's talking about the National Institute of Health, led by Dr. Anthony Fauci, and they are openly talking about, they don't call it gain of function, but that's what they're talking about. He's talking about doing research into gain of function. And it names Fauci's name, and it's like we're looking for the next flu, and we're really working to put all the pieces together. It's gain of function research. It's like, there's the smoking gun right here. It's in our faces. This is what was happening. So y'all do yourselves a favor and start listening to, what we're saying on Culper's Canteen Cup.
Well, and the thing is,
dude,
they'll never.
I saw. I'm
admit to
sorry.
it.
I saw that memory today, Roger, and I lost it. I was sitting on the toilet too. I was just like, I cannot believe it. What's the date on this? It's 2018. I got dizzy in my head. I was like, I can't believe it.
And they all know about it. The folks in the government around it, they all know about it. There's funding that's allocated for it, right? They all know about it. But then all you see on the Hill between Democrats, Republicans, and independents is like, oh, it's all the political jockeying. That's all it is. Going back to your COVID thing and remote working, one last thing, and I think you're spot on with the real estate. I think what's going to suffer the most is we're going to have a degraded workforce with our younger population. I think you're going to see a less skilled, younger population. And when I say younger, because me and you are dumb. I mean, dude, let's put it this way. I ain't learning too much more. Okay. For where I'm at in life and what I've experienced and our academic institutional knowledge, I'm pretty much where I'm at. And I'm okay with that. I'm good with that. Right. Because I've got a couple good years left in me to work, and then they'll put me out to pasture somewhere or whatever. But there's a younger generation out there, my kids, your kids, our listeners' kids, where it's like, hey, man, they got to go through a lot of those stresses, and they've got to go through a lot of those struggles, and they've also got to go through those learning events. And we talked about, the continuity and the legacy and being around other folks. Let me show you how to do this versus let me look at you for 15 minutes on a webcam and then close my monitor when we're done for the day or 2 days or a week. And it's, and I saw it firsthand because one of our younger employees back in the day, I felt bad for her because, wasn't really living up to the expectations that I had for a younger employee. And when I really sat down and started to evaluate what the issue is, it's not that she couldn't do the job or she wasn't motivated or didn't take initiative. We were just very poor at teaching her. And we were very poor at teaching her because everything was remote. We weren't in the same space. And like you said, when you're in a space from 8 to 5 and possibly even lunch and going to the gym or whatever, you learn a lot, right? I can't tell you, especially in my military career, how much I learned from watching those above me. You watch them do it. They teach you, you make mistakes. They help you, they show you, they correct you. And I think we're going to lose that. And, it's not something that you see today. It's not something that you see tomorrow, but it's something in 5, 10, 15 years down the road. I just like, man, did this, this generation get like lazier and dumber? I think that's going to happen. I've got two things that you brought up, and you can pick which one you want, because I actually like both of them. One, we got the bingo card thing. And I think we need to put something on Slack. We need to create C3 bingo cards, and maybe have some of our listeners input. The one that I really liked, and I had this written down because we were drinking one night and we came up with a C3 List of Jericho. I don't know why we named it that. We had a couple drinks and we were going back and forth on text. It's the people that you could punch in the face if you had the choice to, right? So we named it C3 List of Jericho. I'll throw it to you, kick it around. You can throw out 1, 2, 3 names or whatever. If you had a choice, who would you punch in the face? Or if you had the option?
Okay, so with me, I find that funny. Must have been having a few that night because I love that name, and I'm like, what a great name. But we were texting that. I'm gonna write it down. Okay,
I've had it written down for like weeks, so it was one of like Friday night. Like, oh, we're coming up, people we want to punch in the face. Yeah, it's called the C3 List of Jericho.
For me, this is more than just punching in the face. Okay, this is someone that I want to fight. Like, win or lose, I want to fight them. and not a fight like we were talking about earlier. Like we're going to meet in a room, Fight Club style, and there can be rules, whatever, but it's going to be a fight. And what I envision is, Roger, you seen the movie? You just nod. Have you seen the movie Boogie Nights? Okay, so in Boogie Nights, there's this character called the Colonel, right? And the Colonel ends up at the end, he ends up in prison because he's a nasty pedophile. He ends up in prison, and his cellmate is just beating the shit out of him. And he's whining in the corner. He's like, "Shut up, Colonel." He's just slapping him. That's what I want to beat somebody up to where they're whining. And I'm just shut up, slapping them. So there's like some serious, I wouldn't say hatred, but it's just like this person needs to be put in their place a little bit, right? So I've got a few here. I'll just go down the list. And what I want to do in the post, Roger, I'll just tell you now instead of later. What I want to do when we post this is tag all these people on Twitter because most of them
Good job.
have handles. Yeah. And we're
Yes.
also going to do another one where there's a bad list, a naughty list, and a good list of, and we'll tag both of them, right? So let's just go down. So not necessarily in no particular order. Keith Olbermann. It's like, oh God, that
Good one.
guy is just,
Good one.
man. And I know some of these people are old, and it's like, Luke, that's not fair. Well, yeah, I know it's not fair. And that's all right. Hunter Biden, that guy needs to be taught some lessons. I bet you that guy's never been punched in the face. I bet you he's never been punched in the face. Not by a man, at least. I bet some of those hookers tried, slapped him or whatever. But but that might be a good fight. A next good fight is Chink Uyghur. Do you know who he is? He's a left wing commentary guy. He's a big dude. He challenged Joe Rogan to a fight. Chink is a big guy, but he's real. He's super liberal, and the stuff he says is just super inflammatory. He's losing a lot of popularity. It's just like, you know what? Put your money where your mouth is, buddy. Here's another one, Michael Hayden. Now that's an easy fight for me because he's an old man, but I don't care. This guy is an absolute piece of garbage. He's one of the guys that signed on to the Hunter laptop disinformation, Russian disinformation, one of 50 intelligence officials. This guy has betrayed my trust. He's betrayed all our trust, and he deserves to have his ass kicked by none other than me. I wish. And the last one is the guy that bullied me when I showed up to Ridgecrest Elementary School in the 3rd grade. His name is Jackson Austin. You know him, Damon. I hate that dude. To this day, I hold a grudge. I really do. If I saw him in a bar, I don't know how I'd react. And that's how petty life is, right? I hold that. And he was a dick in high school, man. He was a dick to me. That I hold this stuff in my heart. And maybe maybe I need to seek therapy, so I can get over Jackson Austin, want to beat his ass. You know what? That might be a pretty good fight too, but whatever. That's kind of my list. But
That's
don't
only
add
because
him.
you're in
Do
good
add him.
shape. You're in good shape. You're probably in twice the shape or condition that he's in. And it's like, hey, you want to pick on me when I was a little kid. Now we're grown men, bring it on. Right. And that's why I was, because especially when I was a kid, I was skinny, I was a little scrawny and this and that. And,
Oh,
you
me
had your
too.
athletes and, but now I'm pretty sure that I'm probably in just as good a shape, if not better, maybe even twice as good as what most of them are, just judging, your typical American out there, my age group. But so I like your list. I didn't think about Keith Olbermann. Here's the thing with Hunter Biden. Like, part of me envies the dude, right? Because that dude does not care. I mean, here's the thing, and this is how weak the politicians are, and I'll even call them out. The Republican Party. When I don't know if our listeners out there watched on Fox News when Hunter Biden went into the Capitol. Right, he goes into the Capitol building, into the House of Representatives, and as they're talking about him and talking about voting him, contempt of court and this and that, he's sitting in the crowd area. Not only is he there, he brings a couple buddies with him, but brings a Netflix camera crew for his series that's coming out. Like, who allowed this? Like, and all of those politicians, and I'm talking about the GOP, they all set up. I mean, to me, I'd have been like, whoa, you can stop right there. What the F is this? Right?
Yeah, don't give him any fodder. Do you want to be
None.
a YouTube? Do you want to be a Netflix star too? Is that what you wanted, Nancy Mace or whoever that was? It was Nancy Mace.
Yeah.
Nancy Mace and Marjorie Taylor Greene. That was all scripted. I'm butting into your list, but
No, you're
with
good.
Hunter, I'm with you, dude. It's like you played right in to exactly what they wanted. And there's two reasons. Either you're an idiot or you wanted to be on that Netflix special too. And
Yeah, absolutely.
both of those are bad, bad, bad.
Absolutely. So going to my list, and I do not care for Hunter Biden at all. I hope the guy rots in jail, even though he'll never see a day in jail. But there's some balls there, man. That guy's like, I'm going to do what I want. And you know what? One of the pundits did bring up. They were like, well, this is contempt of Congress. The guy's actually facing 7 felony charges, so this one here is the less stressful of all the issues that he's dealing with now. So from that point of view, I get it. Uh, and again, no particular order, and some of these will be on your list. David Hogg, dude, I'd love to be put. You ever see phone booth boxing where they throw like 2 dudes in a phone booth and you've got like 30 seconds and they're like, go, dude, you got to YouTube that stuff. I want to do phone booth boxing. I need to tag him. Phone booth boxing with David Hogg. And I'd have plenty of room in there because that dude is so skinny. Um, Adam Kinzinger. He's another one, dude. I'd love to just punch that dude in the face and smack. He went to Sear C, I guess, because he was probably a pilot or whatever. But it's obviously it's obvious it's the only Sear school he's ever been to. I'd say I'd never hit a woman without her asking me first. Liz Cheney, man, I'd like to slap the dog shit out of that chick, dude. Just like it's just holier than thou. I'm a real Republican. The rest of you are just like, no, lady, you got like 3.5% of your vote. Of the vote in like your state. I mean, come on. Some of these you have to look up. This next one you have to look up on YouTube or on X. Harry Sisson. He's one of the Biden surrogates or whatever. He's like the 18, 19, 20. What's funny is I don't see his buddy. I need to Google that because it was 2 of them. There were 2 of them that were making all these videos, and we're the Gen Millennial, whatever the heck they are. And the guy's just a moron. You're an idiot that doesn't know what you're talking about. But there were 2 of them. I can't remember the other dude's name, but the other dude's not on there anymore, man. It's like strictly him. So I don't know if he was threatened or what the background of the guy is or whatever, but he's one of his surrogates. And then my last one, man, is Eric Swalwell. Dude, you know what I think bothers me with all of these folks, including like Keith Olbermann and Hunter Biden, is they're all over X, except for Hunter. Hunter's not on X, but these folks are all over X. And maybe this is how we get more listeners or how we get more followers is they will go post something that is completely moronic. It's inaccurate, half truth at best. It's outrageous. It's no different than like what Chris Jackson posts for Biden. And they don't engage in any conversation. They just post it. It's wrong, but you can't help yourself. You go on there and you tell them how wrong he is, and they don't engage. And they know they're wrong. They know they're wrong. I think that's why it pisses me off.
So I want to add another name to my list that this should have occurred to me. And Darren always, whatever. Darren doesn't like when I bring this guy up. I think I've changed his mind a little bit. But on my list, which would be a good fight, I think, and I'll tell you why it would be a good fight. It would be fun. Is Dan Crenshaw. Oh, but Luke, he's a Navy SEAL. Yeah, whatever. Here's the thing. That dude does not have a right eye. Usually, I know a little boxing. I can move a little bit. Usually, I fight southpaw, right? But since his right eye, I love the jab, right? Since his right eye is basically blind in his right eye, I'd switch my stance to orthodox and just pepper that side. I might even consult a boxing coach a little bit. Is it better maybe so you can't see the left coming, on that with that right eye? But that guy's the same thing, Roger. It's the same thing you were saying. It's like he's getting on X and posting this stuff. And Josh is really good about this. I'm getting better at it. It's like these guys will come out, like these representatives will come out and be like, this is going on. The implication is this bad thing is going on. This thing I don't agree with is going on. The implication is being something should be done about it. Well, bitch, I ain't the one in the House who can draft a bill, author it, and put it out on the floor. Hey, wouldn't it be great if I was maybe you should run for the House of Representatives so you could do something about it. Stop talking, stop posting here, and just do something about it. Is this your way of doing a little, research on your constituency to see if you should author a bill? No, it's to get more likes. Or whatever they call them on X. and fundraising stuff. It's BS, man. It's like, dude, you are a poser. You are a piece of garbage. You're number 18 on your portfolio, exceeding the SPY. It's just like you're a sellout piece of fucking garbage, and you use the seal thing as a cover. You use it as a cover to do all the bad stuff you're doing. So whatever, dude. Yeah, Dan Crenshaw's on my list. I'll send you my list so you can add them when we make the post.
Yeah,
So
we'll have to come up with something pretty cool and that's, you know, and here's my thing, and I didn't list, well, no, I had a couple of fake Republicans on there. You called it out. I mean, it's like, one, you've got all these politicians that are, oh, look at what they're doing. Again, man, only if you had a job where you were like actually there to create bills and legislate and this and that. But there were so many half truths from the left and the right. And, you know, you threw out something else earlier. You were like, oh, you know, if you had a famous person that you could eat lunch with or meet or whatever. And I was going through my mind. I was like, well, one, I'd love to, you know, Jordan, he's the man. Won some roulette. I know I'm still a little bit of thunder, but the other thing is, like, some of these people, like, name any prominent figure on the left, whether it's your Nadlers or your Schumers. Like, if they would give me, like, we could have a no shit lunch. I'm like, dude, do you really believe this? I mean, and again, I get the right. I understand it, being conservative, but I'm like, there's no way you truly, like, half the stuff they say. It's like, is this just politics? I mean, there's no way you truly believe this, right? I mean, because if they do, and heck, dude, we even talk about Iowa. You know, I when the Iowa caucus was going on, I was like, no way Nikki Haley is going to finish second. I mean, just no way. You know, I know it was close second. I think she was within 2 points or whatever, Ron DeSantis. But I'm just like, hey, I like to feel I have a pretty good pulse of, you know, conservatives or Republicans in general, with us being on that side of the aisle. And I didn't see it, dude. I'm like, if Nikki Haley scores 24, 25 points percentage and finishes second, I'm out of touch with the Conservative Party, like 100%, because I do not see. I mean, I'm shocked she got what she got, but dude, there was no way that she was coming in second. No way, right?
well, that's the thing with Nikki Haley, as far as I'm concerned. It's like when Nikki Haley is like, if for some reason she was the nominee for the Republican ticket, I have to reevaluate where I stand politically. That's not saying I'm going to go with, you know, go be a Democrat or go be a libertarian, but I've got to seriously reevaluate, okay, what's really going on with my party? Because the way I described Nikki Haley, and I might have done this last episode, I'm not sure, but the way I described Nikki Haley is the few things I did not like about George W. Bush, and I do believe that his heart was in the right place. I think he made some wrong decisions, and you know, people are allowed to make wrong decisions. He made them in a moment where I'm sure he thought he was making the right one for pure reasons. But in retrospect, if I could sit down and have lunch with George W. Bush, even though he's not on my list, and it's not lunch, it's a few drinks, by the way. But if I could have lunch with George W. Bush, I don't think he drinks anymore. I would ask him, like, if he had to be honest, it's like, man, what do you really think about the Patriot Act? Now, with the benefit of hindsight, what do you really think about Iraq? And I would hope that that man, unless he had some really good reasons I don't know about, I hope that man would be like, you know, if I could take that back, I would. And with the benefit of hindsight that I have and everyone else has too. Here's the thing about Nikki Haley. She has that benefit of hindsight too. But yet she talks still like she would embody every part of George W. Bush that I think made a mistake, and none of the good things about him. Because I truly believe he's a good man. I believe George W. Bush is a good man. He's a solid dude. Uh, I think I would really enjoy hanging out with that guy. But Nikki Haley doesn't have those, in my mind, she doesn't have those positive qualities that he has. I think she's an opportunist. I think she's a politician. Of course, George W. Bush was too. But George W. Bush, back in the day, if you remember, he didn't want to run for president. He was kind of forced into it by his family, by the party. He didn't want it. He wanted to live the good life because he was, you know, he was a good time having guy. I don't know. But yeah, I'm with you, Roger. If I feel like that if Nikki Haley Yeah, I feel like I'm out of touch. I don't know who's voting for her. I would like to know who's voting for it. It's like, who's getting excited about Nikki Haley? I understand getting excited. I don't agree with it, but I understand getting excited about Vivek. I get that. I understand that. But Nikki Haley, I don't know. Who's that support? Who's that 18%?
Yeah, and it makes me curious, and I don't know enough about New Hampshire politics. Okay, but supposedly she's got this huge lead over DeSantis. She's like 24, 25%. DeSantis is like 5 or 6. So maybe something I need to do a little bit of a deep dive and figure out like. And I get the 5 or 6%, 3, 4, 5, 6%, because you're always going to have that. Dude, you put anybody in the ticket and they're going to get 3, 4, 5%. Well, except for Chris Christie, but anybody else other than him, they'll get 5, 6% or whatever. And I think it's almost like an IO campaign or something, because there's all of this spin up, going into Iowa, and I'm pretty sure that it's her and her surrogates that are just, hey, the more press we get, the more we can put our name out there, then we'll just we'll make it happen. And then she gives this speech. Well, Iowans have spoken, and this race is down to 2 people. I'm like, lady, you came in third, so yeah, I guess it's down to Ron DeSantis. Now it's only one caucus, right? I mean, you've got 49 other states with primaries and caucuses or whatever. But and I don't have the numbers on it. Some of the pundits that, they were on X and a couple of other shows. So Iowa allows you to change your party day of and vote. And from what I saw, anecdotally, okay, there's a significant 5, 6, 7% that were Democrats voting for Nikki Haley. And I think because they
Yeah.
know that she's beatable.
Yeah, and that shit ain't happening in New Hampshire. Not going to happen.
No. So, and I think we'll drop this weekend. So New Hampshire come out Monday. So what's your predictions on New Hampshire?
Oh, Trump's going to win that one.
Sure.
I'll go ahead and say it, even though we talk crap on her. I think it's going to be real close between Haley and DeSantis, and I will say she's probably put in more groundwork there. So I'm going to say Trump first, beats her by up to 30 points, 25 to 30 points, then DeSantis. But I think it's going to be real close between those two. But you can give your prediction. I want to say this now. I'm reading the tea leaves. Y'all know I love the Venn diagram you put out, by the way. The Venn diagram that Roger put out is you got your, because Kamala Harris loves Venn diagrams. You got the Trump, I support Trump Venn diagram or circle. You've got the I support DeSantis circle. They meet in the middle, right? And you have that little space in the two circles. And in that middle space is me. That sums it up. It's like, can we all just stop? If DeSantis wins, I'm good. If Trump wins, I may prefer DeSantis, but I'm Trump. Here's the thing, man. The writing's on the wall. Trump is winning this primary. He's going to win the primary, and he is going to be the candidate. So, folks, love him or hate him. If you're a DeSantis guy, I am a DeSantis guy, but he's not going to win. It's time to start shoring up the defenses. It's time to accept reality. This is what's going to happen. You can hate him. You can say he's going to lose. That's fine. But accept reality. This is the horse we've got. So it's time to bet on the horse. So, Roger, your prediction, what do you think about what I just said too?
No, I think you're spot on. I think it's very close. I know the polling doesn't support it. I think DeSantis pulls that one out, dude. If he doesn't come in second, I think it's going to be extremely close. I don't think it'll be the 25, 26% to 5 or 6% that they're showing in the polls. But you're spot on, dude. And we've said it a million times on here, because all over X, right? Like, I actually have to read into profiles now. I'm like, is this guy, gal, a Democrat, or are they just a Trump hater, or are they just a DeSantis hater? And it's like, one, this is not the first primary and caucus we've ever gone through. They always sing a little bit of mud. I'm not a big fan of the way they do it, because I think it gives too much ammo for the left to use. Although you could argue, hey, you're addressing these things early on, you're addressing them a year out, so they don't become issues in October, September, July, or what have you. But your primaries and your caucuses are for your ideals, right? That's principles. This is the person who closely aligns with me, barring somebody that you just do not politically and ideologically agree with, like Nikki Haley. When it comes down to the general election, man, because So let's say Trump wins, right? Which we all think he's going to win the nomination. Trump wins. Here is what it comes down to. If you don't vote for Trump, it is a vote for Biden. Period. I don't care what you call it. You can, but you can justify it any way you want to. It's a vote for Biden. If DeSantis were to win the primaries in the caucuses, if you don't vote for DeSantis, it's a vote for Biden. And here's a tough thing. It's no different than the Romney vote, right? That killed us all. If you were to look at Nikki Haley, heaven forbid that she wins the primary, I'll talk a lot of smack. We all will, and yeah, I will hold that pen, Mongo style when I do it. But if it comes between her and Biden, no question, it's a no brainer. Now, probably by a very slim margin. You know what? I make that up. It's not even a slim margin. I mean, I agree a lot more with Nikki Haley, and I think she'll be a little bit more under control from the establishment right. But that's a no brainer to me. Biden and Haley, even though she's number 15 on my list, right? So I think with New Hampshire, I think Trump runs away with it. I think he gains his 50%. Even though everybody's trying to downplay it. Oh, you had 49% that voted against. Whatever, dude. They're scared, is what it is. The left is absolutely scared. But I do see. I think Ron, dude, he either pulls it out or he's within a point or two. It's not going to be a 15-point blowout unless I just don't understand New Hampshire that well, which is possible.
The left. Kamala Harris already said on The View that she's scared. And that's a bad look when she's saying,
Yeah,
well, I'm scared to
she
death.
is.
It's like, really? God, you probably shouldn't have said that. But but you just gave away your entire campaign strategy is to scare people,
Yeah,
scare them. So, yeah. But here's the bottom line, though. When it comes to, let's say that it was Haley, which it's not going to be. I'm going to go back to what I just said, dude. I live in reality. Okay,
ain't
it
happening.
ain't going to be. It's going to be Trump. But here's the. It's not irony, but it's interesting that if it was DeSantis or Haley, this would be an absolute blowout.
Yes.
If Haley or DeSantis was the nominee, it would not even be close. And Josh's point is that, well, it's going to be a replay of 2020, and he may be right. I don't know, but he's got a point. It's like people hate Trump so bad. I can think of people right now in my head. I'm not going to call them out who hate him so bad that they will either not vote or they'll vote for Biden. And it's like, how can you possibly this guy? But again, okay, so going back to the whole Haley thing, if she, I think we were having this conversation in the text. It's like, you know, if the country really is gone and you want to hasten the demise of the U.S. so, you can live in squalor or whatever, maybe you just shouldn't vote this time. Or maybe you should vote for Biden because it's like the Joker, dude. It's going to be hilarious. There's going to be so much material if Biden wins again. It's going to be hilarious. It's chaos. It's going to be chaos. It's going to be absolute chaos because that's what we have now is chaos. It's just so whatever.
I'll still be shocked if he makes it, dude. Like, look at where he's at now. So election time, inauguration next year, and then another 4 years. So I want to get into our last segment here because I do like this.
No,
thing.
we got
So
two more. We got two more.
What are the two?
Yeah.
Let's do the bingo card last.
Okay, so the next one is, and you got to tag these people too, because we got to tag the bad with the good, right? So these lists are ever changing, right? They're living lists. We should probably do this quarterly because the people we'd want to fight would probably change, except for Roger. He was always going to want to fight David Hogg. I mean, one stiff punch in the arm for that dude is going to break his little twig arm. It's like, dude, just do some curls. Not even curls. Just do some push-ups. Just anything. Just anything. So it's an ever-evolving list. Now, this list is probably even more evolving than the last. And this list is, Roger calls it lunch. I call it, let's just go out and have some relaxing drinks, get relaxed. Let's have some conversation. And, maybe if the night goes well, we'll go out and party afterwards. That's part of my thing. We'll go out and party if it goes well. Or if you're not a drinker, which I think one of these guys is not a drinker on the list, maybe we'll just have some coffee and just sit down and chill. So in no particular order, first one is Matthew Marsden. And you guys may not know who he is, but I've been following him on X for a while. But he was in not the latest, but the Rambo movie where he goes down to Burma Myanmar. Matthew Marsden was Soldier Boy. He was the guy with the 50 cal sniper. He was the sniper. And I loved his character in that movie. I thought he was so cool. He's a British guy, and he was SAS in the movie. But on X, he just seems like a base dude, man. Just super cool. He's a family man. He's got like 8 kids. Just super cool guy. I love the way he posts. He's kind of down to earth, and he'll actually reply to, some stuff we'll post on there. Just a good dude. I'd love to have a couple drinks with that guy. And of course, obligatory Kurt Schlichter. He appeared real early when our sound quality was bad and Josh pronounced his name wrong. But that guy's just fun. And that guy is totally in line with the Venn diagram that Roger's talking about.
Yes.
He's like, look, I'm a DeSantis guy, and people will pile on his ass. It's like, so if Trump, and he's like, no, I just think DeSantis is the better candidate against Biden. But if Trump wins, I'll vote for him. Trump is a flawed candidate. And I like the way he handles that. And he just seems like a good dude, man. He's a comedian. He was an officer in the army. Good dude. I'll say the best for last. Who he doesn't have a profile, so you won't be able to tag him. James Woods. Dude, James Woods is no joke, man. I mean, that guy, I've learned a lot about him over the past, I don't know, year or so. Real conservative guy, blacklisted in Hollywood, but at the same time, he was a producer in the latest Leonardo DiCaprio movie, the Killers of the Flower Moon. It's like, wow, that guy's big time producer now. So he just seems like a cool guy. Matt Taibbi, the independent journalist, who should have a Nobel Prize for journalism, he's on the list. And then last but not least, I'm still listening to the podcast. It's just 3.5 hours long. Joe Rogan, Taylor Sheridan, the creator of Yellowstone, 1883, 1923. The guy is just cool as hell. And I know you don't listen to Rogan much, Roger, but I'm telling you, if you listen to this entire podcast, this is a guy we would get along with. Solid dude, man. Just old school. I just wish there were more guys like him. But you know what? Here's the thing. I love listening to him because some of his stuff I don't necessarily agree with. Some of the stuff he said. But at the same time, it's like, well, but he's based. He's totally based. I'd love to talk to him about that stuff. So that's my list for now. We got Matthew Marsden, Kurt Schlichter, James Woods, Matt Taibbi, and Taylor Sheridan. What do you got?
That's a good list, dude. It's impressive. So mine's not as impressive. So Jordan, as I said before, I'd love to sit down and shoot the shit with that guy. I mean, just watching The Last Dance, for those out there, if you've been under a rock for the last couple of years, I mean, it's just a fantastic, not just, because I'm a big sports guy, but just to get into like his psyche, you get a glimpse, right? And he gets emotional a couple areas, dude. He gets emotional when it comes down to like people not liking him and this and that. And we all want to play this, this bravado, this is just the way it's done, man. If you want to win, this is how you do it. And we all want to play that up. And when you look at the competitiveness of him, especially when he played, and even now from what I hear, in everything the guy does, and then you see the emotions that come out where there is this battle between like being like, because it's a team game, right? It's a team sport. So you have folks that you're on the team with, you play with, you travel with, he probably spends more time with his teammates or spent more time with his teammates than with his own family during the season. And so you do build those personal relationships and that type of stuff, and friendships, but it's this desire to win. And it overtakes that, right? It takes priority over the friendship and the relationship. So my list is going to surprise you a little bit. So again, my second would be any Democrat leader, like truly like your Schumers, those guys. Like, dude, I mean, I gotta know, right? And again, man, I like what you're saying. Hey, we sit down at a bar, we have a couple drinks, like. So a guy, I don't think he listens anymore, but he used to be back in the unit with us, and he was like, it's all for show, right? He's like, because at the end of the day, the Dems and the Republican get together, and they're all like, there's a good tier there. You almost got me, man. You almost got me, right? They're all on the same side. It's the same Pepsi Coke analogy that we've used several times. So I'd want to know, like, do you truly believe this? Because if you do, we have bigger problems than what I think we have. I think I would rather it's a lie and that you're just pandering, right? Tell me you're pandering, dude. I can live with that. If you truly believe this, we've got bigger issues than what I think we have. I threw her name down. It's really probably more this position. Kimberly Cheadle, who is the director of the Secret Service. She's the 27th director of the Secret Service. Any
Well,
of
that's a
those
good
Secret
one.
Service
That's a
folks,
good one.
yeah, I've got some. We'll have to talk offline. I've got some buddies that worked in the Secret Service, one that you know, and a couple guys that worked several different administrations. And dude, so I met the guy who was standing outside the door during the time where the Monica Lewinsky thing was going on, and it's pretty wild, dude. I mean, some of these stories, of course, he didn't go like way in depth or anything like that. And it's actually when we were talking, it's like you were saying, we were having dinner, we had a couple drinks, and everybody's talking about stuff. I was like, yeah, I shot Bin Laden in the face like 4 times. They only reported it twice, and he's like, oh yeah, this is what I was doing. But anyway, one of our listeners knows him and has some good stories on his own. But any of those folks like in that type of position, just some of the, if you get the loose lips and kind of give us the dirt, that would be awesome. Going back to the Democrat leader, like anybody from any of your leftist talks, like The View, specifically like Whoopi Goldberg, like one, are you that stupid? And two, to actually have some dialogue, because again, I've never watched The View a day in my life, not for any more than a 30-second clip that I see on Fox News. So maybe I'm just ignorant and need to watch it, but they throw these statements out there and there's no dialogue back and forth. I'm like, you don't truly believe this, do you? Like, you don't truly understand how society works. You don't truly know how businesses work. It's right up there with Jill Biden. She's a great doctor. She's a wonderful doctor. Like, she didn't realize her doctorate was in education. Like, hey, Whoopi, she doesn't actually, like operate on people. It's no different. And I forget the net lady's name. I think it's like Jenna, something like that on X. Did you see the whole thing with the female reporter and
Uh-huh.
talking about the weather in Detroit?
In
So
Detroit,
how's
yeah.
the weather going to impact you? And he's like, so I don't know if you know this or not, but it's indoors. The amount of people that came out to defend that reporter, I'm like, no, she is a complete moron. And you were more of a moron for coming out and defending her. Now, I get it. They went in the backstory. It's like, well, it could have been a last minute assignment. You never know. They just grabbed her. They put her on the street. And I'm like, hey, you're talking to like a playoff team here. I don't think they just grabbed somebody off the side of the street and had them go interview them. But anyway, anybody from like The View, specifically Whoopi Goldberg, I'd like to interview or sit down and shoot the shit with Joe Rogan, man. When you look at the people he's talked to, and we get that 3-hour segment on his YouTube, but what goes beyond that? Because he's doing the same things that we're doing, right? They obviously now, I think with his, I mean, there's no format to his stuff. It's more conversation or whatever, but I'm sure there are some stipulations going in, just like anybody else would. We don't go too far down this road for whatever reason. We don't go far down. We won't talk about this. We won't talk about that. Like, I want to know what happens behind the scenes when the cameras aren't rolling, when the microphone is not recording, much like C3. You guys don't even want to know what happens here when the cameras stop rolling, the abuse I take. And then finally, dude, RFK Jr., man. I mean, just after listening to him on the Joe Rogan show, and we did an episode on it where I sat there with my iPad and I had him, in my ear, and I was listening, I was fact checking. I mean, one, he is a wicked smart dude. And I think just nothing in specific or nothing specific or in particular, but I would almost like to fact check him as he starts talking about things. Hey, what do you know about this? What do you know about that? Because, dude, just during that 3 hours, there is so much stuff that came out that I would have never even thought to look up. You just kind of, hey, it's from the government. It's correct. And you go back, you're like 99% of the stuff is inaccurate. It's crazy. So that would be my short list of people I could, sit at a bar, have a couple of drinks and have some loose lips with.
So there's a lot of different directions we can go. So I'll tell you what we'll do. Teaser. We'll save the bingo for when Josh is here, because I think Josh had some, and I couldn't scroll back far enough in our chat history, because I got to scroll back for like literally 5 minutes to find something we talked about a day ago. That's how.
They need a
That's how.
search. They need a search
Yeah.
for that.
So I want to touch on a couple of things you just said. The reason I didn't put Joe Rogan on the list, even though that would be great, I didn't put him on because I don't know. I can't. All this is perfect world, right? And it's all just imaginary.
You can search.
Oh, what?
I didn't realize you could search your messages on iPhone. Look at
You're gonna
that.
have to give me you're gonna have to give me a step by step front page on that one.
Hey,
But
real quick,
so
I'll do it for you right now. It's on your home screen. It says search. So all you gotta do is type it in there.
home screen on your for your messages, you can do search.
On your phone, man, you just hit search right there at the bottom. It says search. You just type it in, and it says, "What do you want to search in?" Messages. And there you go. Learn
What do
something
you
new
know? I
every day.
learned something tonight. So
Sorry.
we'll still wait for Josh though, even though I just discovered a search function. Uh, so here's the thing: Joe Rogan is a comedian. Okay. And number one, I think that I would bore Joe Rogan. I don't think he would really be into anything that I would say because Joe Rogan talks to SEAL Team 6 guys, he talks to CIA guys, and it's just like I don't have that comedian thing. I just feel like that, in a perfect world, he would be engaging. I just don't know if I can engage him. Look at that, perfect. Roger's showing the Venn diagram that
I found that through my search
Kamala
function.
Harris. So, yeah, Joe Rogan is I'd love to talk to him. I just hope I could be engaging enough for him to actually pay attention to what the hell I was, you know, my fumbling attempts to get him to engage. I'd have to think about it. And that leads to a question I want to ask you about the Democrat Party leaders and like Whoopi Goldberg or members of the View or
Uh-huh.
whatever because Chink Uygur, the guy I put on the list, he's like that too. And it's like, do you really believe this shit or is this all just a grift? Right. So, but I'm going to ask you a question about that in a second. So Todd Bowles he's the coach of the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. He's the one that the DEI reporter asked the question about Detroit. Are you prepared for the weather? Well, I don't know if you know this, but for the past 30 years, Detroit has had a, indoor stadium, right? So the Patriots recently hired a new head coach after Bill Belichick. Bill Belichick was disastrous this past season. His time has gone with the Patriots. Maybe he belongs somewhere else, but for now, he just wasn't working. So they hired Gerard Mayo, who's a former linebacker at New England. Um, I don't know his coaching credentials. I'm sure he must have some if he's going to be the Patriots head coach.
Nope.
But Gerard Mayo is a African American, and they asked him something about race. And Gerard Mayo said, "Well, I absolutely think that people shouldn't be colorblind because if you can't see race, you can't see the problems. That you can't see the problems of racism. So you have to acknowledge race." And it's just like, man, I know saying that you're colorblind is it's a white people thing or whatever, but it's like, man, why you got to go there? But this guy, take it back to Todd Bowles. He said something exactly the opposite. He's an African American coach as well. They asked him about race, and he said the exact opposite of Gerard Mayo. He's like, look, in the locker room, we're all just football players. We're all football players. You can choose to look at race if you want, but we're all football players. I don't care what color you are. Just perform at your position. We don't care. We're a brotherhood here. And I like that. It's like you got two African American head coaches. One is going the race way. The other one's like, no, man, we're just football players. So I found that interesting. That's cool. I think Tony Dungy. Well, maybe it's not Tony Dungy, but another one of those coaches the same way. So let me ask you this, and I'm putting you on the spot here, but you are a case officer, and if you had to talk to one of these Democrat leaders or one of these people on the View, and it's not the perfect world scenario, you have got to sit down with them. Hey, come over to our table. You let's say you bought him a round of drinks or something. They're like, oh, he looks like a nice intersectional kind of guy. He might be gay. I don't know, but he's definitely not completely white. Let's invite him over to our table. Now you're sitting at Joy Behar and Chuck Schumer and Whoopi Goldberg's table. What is your approach? Like, how do you approach them? What methods do you use to open them up and get them to start talking to you? I know I'm putting you on the spot, but a lot of times in our job, we're put on the spot like this.
Well, I think with Schumer, it's a game, right? Like dude, he's smarter than the average bear. There's going to be no getting. Hey, let me place two. I think when you look at the Whoopies and the Behars, you almost have to play the naivete or hey, teach me. Like I don't understand this. Teach me, right? And you need to have them explain it because it's several things. One, you're going to realize that they can't explain it. And then the second piece is you'll actually be able to teach them and educate them. And you know, prime example, I was on a flight back when I used to fly Southwest, and this was years ago. And it was an older black lady. She was probably 45 or 50 years old. Um, I was sitting in the middle because that's all that was left. And I actually don't know why I was sitting in the middle. Anyway, she was sitting next to me, so maybe I was sitting on the aisle and she was sitting in the middle. But she had to cross over my bag. She twisted her foot, ankle, whatever, sat down. Didn't start off very well. Far left, far left. And the topic of the time that was going around the news was maternity leave. And anyway, we got into the conversation, whatever, however we got there. And she was talking about, well, every business should have, maternity leave. They should get 16 weeks. I don't understand why I don't get 20, da 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 da. And so I just, I kind of went down that road. And it's like, well, why should they get that many? Well, because they need to do this and this and this. Well, who picks up their work then? Like, so if you take off 20 weeks, who picks up your slack? And so what do you do for a living? And she was like in the education system or something like that, where there is no time accountability or anything like that. And so then, bringing it to a small business side where my experience comes from, it's like, well, who pays for that? I'm like, so I run, my small business. I make t-shirts out of my home. And I have one employee who helps me with the press. And I won't bore the audience with it. But anyway, I started walking her down that road. And then at the end, it's just like, I think she stopped just short. I'm making this up. She stopped just short of saying, oh, hell no, she ain't going to take no damn 20 weeks off of maternity leave. She can be back in the office in 8 weeks. Because when you take it from a macro level to a micro, right? It's easy when you talk about the workforce, using that as an example. When you're like, okay, you're running a t-shirt shop and you have one employee, and this is what you use to pay rent, and your employee gets pregnant, and then wants 16 weeks. Okay, it's one thing to take off. It's another thing if you're continuing to pay that employee for 16 weeks. But anyway, back to your question, that's how I would approach it. You do the naivete, the stupidity, educate me. And because those people there, believe it or not, if you've got the time and the environment is right, they may hate you for it, but you can walk them to the light, and it's that whole Socratic learning method, right? Where I'm not just going to throw it out there or throw it up on the chalkboard. You're going to learn this yourself, but I'm going to guide you to learn that, the way I think.
Yeah, I mean, that's a good one. The naivete, you can't go wrong with someone with naivete, someone who's got a huge ego. So, of course, anyone who is a famous person or a public figure is probably going to have that big ego, or they may not think they do, but they do. So, yeah, naivete is a good educate me. My approach generally is the all shucks approach. I lean into my accent a lot, act like I'm kind of dumb. It took me years to learn that, by the way, folks. When I first got into this business, that sounds ridiculous. But I wouldn't call it the spy game, but you know, uh, I don't even know what to call it. When I got into this business, yeah, I was thinking I got to get rid of my accent because people are going to, if they hear my accent, my Texas accent, they're going to start thinking this guy's a rube. This guy doesn't know what he's talking about. And that's not the impression I want to make. That was a mistake, of youth. And so I did. I got rid of my accent. I worked hard to get rid of it. And then I realized years later, like almost 15 years into the business, no, I need that accent because I want them making assumptions about me. Yeah, period. So the approach I take is very successful for me, not just in the business, but in everyday life, is do that all shucks. Make them your best friend. This is my friend who's a little slow. This is my friend Lenny, who's going to hug you too hard and kill you, because I know what's going on in my mind. I'm picking you apart while I'm disarming you at the same time. So yeah, the naivete and naivete goes perfect into my approach. Yeah, it's that's a good
It's
one.
funny because my wife tells this story a lot. So the first vehicle that we bought together when we were married was a Jeep Cherokee. It was used. I'll make this very quick because I know we're short on time, but it goes into like the stereotyping, like the hey, you're just dumb, you're poor, whatever. It was a Sunday afternoon. We're looking for a vehicle because my wife was pregnant with my boy. Um, we were down in Tucson at the time. Jeeps were very expensive, Jeep Cherokees. We walk in there, and dude, I wear the bummiest cut up shorts, flip flops. My shirt's got like 4 threads that are holding up my, you know, chicken wing arms or whatever. I mean, we look dirt poor. Well, we were dirt poor, but we look dirt poorer than what we actually were. And we walk in there, and there's one guy, and he's laid back, and he's got his feet kicked up on the table, and he's got his newspaper out or whatever. And prior to this, we'd done our due diligence. We were already approved for a loan. We already knew what we could afford. Yada yada yada. So we go in there, and the guy's like, "Hey, can I help you?" I'm like, "Yeah, dude. Can you just show me where your used vehicles are?" And he's like, "Oh no, we'll go walk away." No, no, we're good, dude. I'm just, I'm here looking around. And again, I my shorts were barely on me. I look like a homeless person. So I go out there. We find this Jeep Cherokee, and to be quick about it, I was basically the guy's like, he doesn't even come out. He's standing up, and he's like, "Hey, how much for this one right here?" And he's like, 16.9 or whatever. Like he just literally threw it off the cuff. I'm like, "We'll take it." He's like, "You'll take it?" I was like, "Yeah." And so anyway, we go through all the rumors. So we come back because it's a Sunday. So we come back Monday, and we're doing the paperwork because everybody was gone. They had a company softball game that night. And we come back Monday. I'm sitting the finance guy, and he's like, "So you're the one who almost got our guy fired." And I was like, "What are you talking about?" He's like, "Yeah, that vehicle was not supposed to be sold for 16.9." So when I left, I got the price written down on the back of the business card because I had to come back Monday when everybody was open to get the vehicle. And I guess they were going to put it on the lot for 21.9, 22.9. The guy thought that I couldn't afford the vehicle. He was on his way to a ball game, whatever. He was closing the shop up, wrote down the price, gave me the card. Oh, he'll never come back. Yeah, I want my Jeep guy. So, to your point, that can be used to your advantage. Real quick, and I'll kick this back to you to close this out. So Gerard Mayo, here is his coaching experience, because he was a player and he retired in 2015. He went back to coach under Belichick. 2019 to 2023, he was the inside linebacker coach. So that's it. Period. So here's what I will say with this in my closing is football and professional sports is about winning. So 2 things. One, I want to know when the diversity hires are going to start for his linemen, because I guarantee that doesn't come up. And 2, dude, I don't care what color you are when you play in sports, especially the NFL and especially the New England Patriots. You better start seeing wins, right? It doesn't matter what color, dude. If there was a chick that could kick a 60-yard field goal, I would have her on the team. I don't care gender, race, color, creed, background, whatever. You better start seeing wins. And if it means putting, 5, white linemen, 5 black linemen, 5 Asian linemen, whatever, you put the best package out there to win the game. And if he doesn't figure that out, he won't be around very long.
100%. Maybe, I don't know. New England was used to losing for a long time. They played the 85 Bears for the Super Bowl. 85 Bears took them out, bro. One of the most talented teams in NFL. And it's good that we started talking about sports with about a minute to go in the podcast, because maybe our boy Teddy is still here. But anyway, yeah, good one. Roger and I are like, well, Josh didn't show up. He stood us up. He ghosted us. Maybe we'll just go for an hour, and here we are, coming up against the time. So it's always a good conversation. Anytime any of the 2 of us are together, it's good. Anyway, we got to experiment with just the one person. I got to give a shout out, a lot of shout out. We always forget. Y'all know who you are, but Darren had both of his toenails, big toenails removed from that altar we did. So shout out to Darren, man. Appreciate you listening. I'm going to pour one out to Hazel here right on the ground. You see that? That one goes out to Hazel. And for the rest of y'all, keep your canteen cups full and tightly secured.